the long soaking ones. So we sort of given them 25 minutes, and then same amount of time on the concrete yard. And just during that extra time, we're looking at any that need attention. So a couple of lame sheep, and we've got a few dirty tails to clean up on the lambs.
Those bottle babies will not stop yelling. Even if I do feed them, they will still yell. Okay guys, come here. You guys hungry? I shouldn't have asked that question. I know the answer. Hi. All the moms just came in. We got Bella in just in time. Okay, right here, right here.
Are mine or Grant's. These are things that happen to neighbors of ours, so still close and in the community, but I just wanted to clear up any confusion. Not ours.
Well, we're back in the combine. Are we surprised? No, you shouldn't be, because we're in the very middle of harvest. Almost exactly the middle of harvest, actually. Considering the fact that...
Alright guys, I didn't really want to have to get on here and do this, but I had to. These are fiberglass stakes right here. Those big bulky stakes on the back of the truck, wooden stakes. I called 2 weeks ago to get a quote on these fiberglass stakes because we need some more stakes this year. I got a quote, 83 cents. I called the man this morning. I said, hey, I know these tariffs are crazy and everything going on. I said, what can you do me on those fiberglass stakes now if we needed a load? It's a 3-month ETA from time you place the order. He said, Taylor, he said, you don't want to hear this price and I'm about to give you. And I said, well, give it to me anyways. He said, each of those stakes now is going to be $1.74 a piece. And I said, well, you know, and I know both that we can't do that, and that's going to be impossible. So that's just to let you know a little bit of what we're going through out here on our farm and what farmers in general are going through. These tariffs, not the best thing for our country. I voted for Trump.
So y'all, AM, PM staffing service posted this on Facebook because they're looking for farm pickers. And these are the terms right here. The comments, I'm going to show y'all some of the comments. The comments, Lord have mercy.
Hey y'all, they're hiring farm pickers, $11 an hour, 9 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, May through July, in Luling, Louisiana. MAGA? Aren't you guys so excited? You finally got what you wanted. You got rid of all the brown people taking all your mother jobs. Now go get them. Go get the job. If there's the numbers on there. I think it's a staffing agency. They'll set you up with your containers. You could be in the hot burning sun for 10 hours a day picking blueberries, making $0. You're still going to need Medicaid, which you're not going to have because your cult leader's taking it away. But like, whatever. Go get those white people Americana jobs. Go, Harry, good luck, you crazy son of a...
Well, y'all got rid of the migrants and now they need somebody to pick blueberries. $11 an hour, 9 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, May through July in Louisiana. Louisiana in the summertime, you know how hot that is? Shit. Even a crackhead wouldn't even do that. You know, a crackhead be like, this is beneath me. I can't even do that. Crackhead be like, I don't want to smoke that bad. I don't want to get high that bad. Man, this is, hey, y'all got rid of the migrants. See, we told you it's jobs that Americans just won't do. It's some jobs that even Americans won't do, and this is one of them. So now look at you. So I don't know if y'all gonna find anybody to pick blueberries in the summertime in Louisiana. Shit, that's nasty work.
Y'all, I have some mixed feelings about these farmers that are getting screwed over by these tariffs. There's part of me that wants to laugh in their faces and say, congratulations, you got exactly what you voted for, bro. And then there's another side of me that understands that these people are just too simple and don't really understand what they did.
You don't want to hear the price I'm about to give you. I said, well, give it to me anyways. He said, each of those steaks now is going to be $1.74 a piece. I said, well,
double the price.
We can't do that, and that's going to be impossible. So that's just to let you know a little bit of what we're going through out here on our farm and what farmers in general are going through. These tariffs, not the best thing for our country. I voted for Trump.
Now, if you didn't catch that at the end, he said, these tariffs aren't the best thing for our country, and I voted for Trump. These people don't really pay attention to the news. These are people that just listen to what Earl says down at the diner, and he's voted Republican his whole life because they're the party of God. And speaking of God, there are a lot of these farmers that say, you know what? I'm not that worried because God's got this.
lot of faith, and our faith is in God and not in administration.
In agriculture, there's about 85% of what happens on my farm that is completely out of my control.
Yeah.
So I have to do the very best I can at managing that 15% of inputs and costs and labor and marketing and signing the best contract and doing the best job that I can, and leave the other 85% up to the good Lord. And that's all we can do, whether it's weather or disease or a hailstorm or a pandemic or administration.
They're trying to compare these tariffs to a natural disaster, but this isn't a natural disaster. This was a decision made by one man who is screwing them over. And they're just like, well, it's in the Lord's hands. What can we do? And this, again, is why religion is so dangerous. They're willing to accept financial ruin because the Lord's got this, so I'm not going to be worried about what Trump decides to do. And my friends over at the Cowboy Church told me that God put him in office for a reason. And that's just it. When you think that there's a supernatural force just watching over you at all times, nothing matters. Your family might starve. Well, if that's what God wants, who am I to argue with him? If you don't get your kid vaccinated, they could easily die of a disease that's easily preventable. Well, if that's what the Lord wants, I'm not going to be able to stop him. And that is why religion is one of the most dangerous things on this planet. Because these people have been convinced that they are completely out of control of things that they could completely control if they wanted to. And the sad thing is that we need our farmers, but Darwinism is going to take them all away from us if they don't get away from this Christian nationalist way of thinking. Unfortunately, I just don't see that happening. Do you?
Now, this orange crap is jacking the economy up, jacking the farmers up, which you voted for it, so good on you, farmers. And now you want us to bail them out with our tax dollars again? Yeah, no, I vote no. Then on top of that, China's literally calling us peasants because some person who will go unnamed decided to call them peasants when they supply us with, I don't know, most of the stuff we have. But you know what? Now that I think about it, everybody might be turning into peasants because, again, the economy is doing a topsy-turvy thing. We literally going back to where we was at, I don't know, 4 years ago when he got out of office and somebody had to come in and try to clean up his mess because he tied in all the bailouts and on top of tax cuts for people who don't need it. So, yeah, maybe they are. They're just trying to turn everybody to peasants.
So a lot of people may have missed it, but have y'all seen this? So first, let me describe what you're seeing. What you are seeing is a protest by Maine farmers. These are people, by and large, who voted for and supported Donald Trump. While Kamala won the state of Maine, and she won it by not the margins that you would typically see when there was a clear difference between what Donald Trump was saying and what Kamala was saying. He won, Donald Trump won this specific district where there is a significant population of rural voters and farmers. So this is how the news in Maine explain this situation.
The Department of Agriculture has angered those who work on small farms across the state.
Political reporter Kate McCusker heard from Maine's farmers who gathered to protest in Augusta today.
With some arriving on tractors and one even carrying a bucket of manure, today Maine farmers gathering to protest recent cuts by the Trump administration. Several farmers from across the state spoke out against recent cuts by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to school lunch programs and food banks. They say federal funding is crucial for small farmers to sustain their business. Some say they've already invested money that the federal government had promised to reimburse them for, or have signed contracts to support them. And overall, they say the uncertainty and confusion is hurting the industry.
This is not a partisan issue for me. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm a Mainer who thinks we need farms and farmers to feed people in our state.
So Maine farmers, help me to do the math here. 1 + 1 = 2. The sky is what color? Blue. If someone tells you who they are, it's best you believe them. Donald Trump said that these were the things that he was going to do, and he did them. He talked about tariffs, and he talked about cutting the Department of Agriculture. He did exactly what he said he was going to do. This is your around and find out moment. Just enjoy it. Take it like a man or woman. You voted for this. This is exactly what you deserve.
Hotel and farm workers might have a special way to work legally in the United States. A couple of days ago, Trump floated a new program specifically for farm workers and hotel workers. The idea is that if an employer has a need for farm workers or hotel workers, they'll come up with a plan, a special request to present to the government and apply for these visas. This is specifically for workers already working for this employer but not having legal status. They'll have to exit the country, apply for their visas overseas, and come back with this pre-approval. Currently, the only way for a farm worker to work in the United States is through and for hotel workers using the H-2B visa. These visas have seasons, and for the October season, now is the time to apply for an H-2B visa. As far as this new program, we still don't have any details.
Last night I watched video after video of farmers who might lose their farms because the government is reneging on contracts they wrote with these farmers. Hi guys, my name's Will, your favorite rural campaign and elections expert, and let's talk about it. Now the problem is President Trump's order to freeze most federal grants and loans has created a panic and uncertainty within the agricultural sector, which relies on billions of dollars in direct government assistance for loans, disaster relief, and conservation practices, many of which have been around since the days of FDR, and farmers have begun to rely on them. Now, if you've watched the news at all, you know that a federal judge blocked the order on Tuesday. The problem is, and what the media isn't telling you, is that farmers and ranchers over the last week to 10 days have begun to receive letters telling them that the government may not be able to live up to the promises they made in these signed contracts with farmers and ranchers to improve conservation and increase productivity on the farm. Sadly, I watched one cattle farmer video last night in the state of Missouri where he said that he's going to fall $80,000 short in funding because the government promised him that if he and his family invested in good conservation practices, they would support his efforts with grants and loans. He received a letter in the past 10 days telling him that they couldn't keep their promise even though they have a signed contract. And as a direct result, he's going to fall $80,000 short on his spring loan payment. And the only option he has right now is to sell his cattle. And he needs those cattle because those cattle are going to have calves, and he needs those calves to pay his fall payment. It's a no-win situation, and it's not his fault. My friends, this is the problem with electing a president that knows nothing about agriculture and placing people at the Department of Agriculture whose only understanding of growing crops and raising livestock is what they learned in a YouTube video on the plane on their way to Washington, D.C. To give you an example of the size of the problem, farmers received more than $10.5 billion in direct government payments in 2024, nearly half of which came from conservation programs, and that figure doesn't include federal crop insurance, which accounted for over $19 billion just in 2022 alone. And the consequences not only impact a farmer's ability to pay his loans, they also run the risk of costing farmers the land itself. As an example, the federal government approved a $2.3 million low-interest federal loan to replace drainage tiles in Montgomery County, Illinois. The loan was part of a $307 million USDA grant program to modernize rural drinking water and wastewater infrastructure. And for those of you that didn't grow up on a farm, drainage tiles or pipes buried under farmland carry away excess water. Farmers began using them in the 1890s, and many of these tiles in Montgomery County, Illinois are collapsing, and that causes flooding. And flooding prevents farmers from planting their crops. Now, farmers are starting to understand the extent of Trump's lack of knowledge, and they're starting to speak out. One farmer was quoted as saying, "Trump has no knowledge, zero knowledge of what's important relating to agriculture, especially agricultural drainage." Unless you think that the grant programs spelled out in the freeze are the only way the Trump administration is attacking small family farms and ranches, remember this. This is just one piece of the puzzle. Before attempting to freeze federal grants and loans, Trump signed an executive order suspending all Inflation Reduction Act funding, including the USDA's Partnership for Climate, Smart Commodities, and a program aimed at supporting sustainable farming practices. The Inflation Reduction Act is a cornerstone of former President Joe Biden's climate policy, and it allocated $400 billion in funding and tax credits to spur conservation and green energy efforts. And many people don't know that billions of those dollars went into agriculture. Now, I know it's easy for Americans who are not involved in agriculture to simply say, well, that's who they voted for, or FAFO. But I'm simply asking everyone to remember that 30% of farmers and ranchers did not vote for Donald Trump. And the consequences of our inability to raise the amount of food that we need to grow to feed our country, and to grow the amount of livestock that we need to grow to feed our country and the world, will be felt mostly by poor people, the elderly, and children, more than anybody else. I'm asking everyone who watches this video and cares about food prices and the small family farm and ranch to call your elected officials, whether they're a Democrat or Republican, and tell them that the federal government needs to keep its word to small family farms and ranches. They need to provide the money that they promised they would provide for conservation efforts, improve farming, and increase productivity on the family farm. Farmers were counting on this when they signed the paper and spent the money that they spent. And don't let your politicians tell you that farmers aren't in danger. These letters have already gone out, and farmers have already been notified that they may not receive the funds that they were promised. And any politician that tells you otherwise is either sorely misinformed or they're lying to you.